Hello, it's been a handful of days. Did I do this from Singapore the other day? I did, didn't I? I signed off chapter 32 and then hoped to do stuff yesterday, and was just exhausted all day and did nothing. I even forgot to do a podcast. I actually pledged to do a podcast every day this month, and I failed. I mean, I kind of realised at 1 in the morning and thought, I could do one now, and then thought, nah, it's gone. So, yes, no podcast yesterday, but there will be one today because I'm going to do some writing now. A couple of things to whinge about. So, firstly, I have in the past expressed lots of opinions about what I think of Amazon as a company. Well, yesterday I decided to buy something, and the best price I could find was on Amazon. Normally there isn't much in it, but I really like the TV show starring Martin Clunes called Doc Martin, and if I'm honest, what made me want to revisit it was I recorded a travelogue documentary thing on one of the satellite channels with him and Neil Morrissey from Men Behaving Badly. And it made me remember how much I remember Behaving Badly was all right for what it was. I mean, it's dated badly now, but I remember I just sat there thinking, oh, I really want to watch Doc Martin again. So I ordered the complete box set, and actually I ordered it yesterday, and it arrived yesterday. They dumped it on my doorstep at 6 p.m. without even ringing the doorbell. Now, I was very jet lagged, and I went to bed about half an hour after that, having not checked my emails, having not responded to the door because they hadn't rung. And then I woke up at 4 a.m, having had a decent amount of sleep, and saw the email, saw a photograph of it dumped on my front doorstep, and thought, that's not very good, I better go and get that. It's not there. So I contacted Amazon via their stupid website, and it's like, often people find things, it takes them more than 24 hours to find it. So once you definitely haven't found it after 24 hours, contact us. I was livid because it was dumped on my front doorstep and presumably stolen. If I'm really lucky, one of my next door neighbours saw it and thought, that might get nicked, I'll take that away. But you'd have thought if they were going to do that, they'd have pushed a note through there or saying, I've got it, so don't worry. So Amazon can fuck off, basically, pardon my French. They either give me a full refund or they send it out to me again. I don't care which, but I'm not accepting them dumping it on my frigging doorstep. And once again, that underlines my reason why I don't use them. So about 2 years ago, I bought a Babylon 5 box set from them and was literally waiting in. The door is, hang on, just the other side of that white door there is my front door. It's literally less than 2 feet from the other side of that door. And they didn't ring the doorbell then either. They've got this habit. Well, the thing about Amazon is they do make their staff rush, particularly the delivery drivers. But it's not good enough. And so potentially I've had this nicked because they just dumped it on my doorstep. So that was really long. So I woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning, saw that the Doc Martin box set should be there and thought, I fancy that actually. I could watch a bit of Doc Martin now, 4 in the morning. Anyway, obviously I didn't because it's not there. Bastards. Do not buy it. Do not shop with Amazon. They are awful. And they don't give a shit about customer service. Which is why I wish I'd stuck to my original guns and not shopped with them, and that's kind of my plan. I just need to check something. Hang on. I need to look at my settings because I'm not sure. Oh, no, my picture quality is what it should be. Maybe it's just a dirty lens then, I don't know. It just doesn't look great on the screen in front of me. Never mind. Right, so what I'm going to do now is a bit of editing. So I'm on to chapter 33. Bearing in mind I set myself a target of hitting chapter 30 by the end of the month. I'm well ahead, but I quite fancy getting a little bit more done. So I'm going to read through chapter 33. I've actually basically done 33, 34 and 35. So those are printed off here. I don't think I'll do the other 2 chapters in this sitting. I think I just want to get one done now. And then maybe have a break and come back later. So let me go to that view. I never did my test text just to make sure that's all working. So let's just do that. Yeah, that seems to be working. Lovely. So I'm going to just crack on really and do this chapter. So chapter 33, 1 down. He's dying. Clayton looked over both Claire and Mackenzie in the cell-like room. No, loomed. That's why that doesn't make sense. Clayton loomed over both Claire and Mackenzie in the cell-like... It is a cell. Clayton loomed over both Claire and Mackenzie in the cell as he stared down at the bed that the young man had been sprawled across. He was still wearing the tracksuit that they had given him, and the apparatus that was attached to his head was surrounded by unhealthy grey-looking skin. His head had been hanging over the side of the bed to prevent any pain from contact with surfaces, but now that he was unconscious, Claire had moved it back onto the pillow and had pulled a blanket up to his neck. Clayton gave an uninterested grunt. "Will he wake up?" Claire looked upset. "Maybe with some morphine and adrenaline, but even then, not for long, I don't think." Clayton nodded and pulled his mobile phone from his pocket. He dialed a number. Claire was probably paranoid, but she was sure he was attempting to hide the scream from her. He spoke a few terse words with his back to her, then thrust the phone back into his pocket. "We have a decision to make," he said, a nasty smile crossing his thuggish features. "Someone is coming to look at him." I don't like that first sentence. I'm just going to go back to that. Clayton loomed over both Mackenzie and Claire in the tiny cell. That's in the small cell, in the tiny. Prone. Let's make this better. Why isn't that letting me type? Clayton did with Claire and Mackenzie in the tiny cell. He stared down at the prone form of Mackenzie, who was sprawled across the single bed that was adjacent to the wall. He was still wearing the tracksuit they'd given him, and the apparatus was such said, "That's much better." Right. A few moments later, the door to Mackenzie's cell opened and Sayers walked in. He looked guiltily towards Claire, whose mouth fell open in astonishment. "But stop talking and tell me about the boy," snapped Sayers. Claire stared at him, wide-eyed and frightened. She was unaware of Clayton stepping behind her until he grabbed her left arm and twisted it behind her back. She yelped in pain and angrily tried to blink back her tears. "The infection caused by the clown is killing him. His temperature is very high. A combination of drugs might help to wake him up." I'm going to italicise the might. Might help to wake him, but he's so unwell now I can't guarantee it. Sayers nodded thoughtfully. "And how long do you think he has left?" Claire shook her head. "I'm not a fully qualified nurse, but not very long. A couple of days at the very most, probably less." "Will he wake again?" "I doubt it." "Will Simon still be able to speak through him?" Claire shook her head. "I have no idea." Sayers appeared to consider for a moment. "We need to connect him to find out. Clayton, take her away and shave her head." We need to connect and find out." He looked guilty across to Claire. "Clayton, take her away and shave her head." The look in Claire's eyes more from a mixture of anger and fear to outright tell her, "No, you'll kill me." Sayers rolled his eyes. "Yes, but probably not for a week or so. Plenty of time to get used to the idea. We won't fit the crown until I know Mackenzie's and no further use. Mr. Clayton, shave her now." Clayton started to drag Claire to the door. She tried to resist, but he twisted her arm again until she yelped with pain and complied. As they reached the threshold of the door, Clayton turned to Sayers, but his eyes met Claire's as he spoke. "Bit of a waste, really," he said. "She's quite pretty. Do what you feel. Do what you fell." Do what you feel you need to, said Sayers with a resigned sigh. It won't impact on our ability to communicate with Simon as long as you don't hurt her too much. Clayton saw apprehension across Claire's eyes. Come on, darling, he said as he dragged her out of the room. Sayers watched with unease as the door closed behind Clayton, listening to Claire's screams of protest and fear as Clayton dragged her away. I'm going to put them. Sayers watched with unease as the door closed behind them, listening to Claire's screams of protest and fear as Clayton dragged her away. Shaking his head, Sayers moved over to the wheelchair in the corner of the room. He dragged it to the bed, locked the wheels, and attempted to move Mackenzie from the bed and into the wheelchair. I'm just going to say from the bed, because it's obvious that he's going to move him into the wheelchair. The boys with no help at all, and when Sayers' hands touched his skin, he was surprised by the amount of heat coming from him. Once Mackenzie was safely strapped into the chair, Sayers wheeled him out of the room. He walked past the second cell and acknowledged the guard that was sitting bored outside of it. The screen on the desk showed Daniel Huxley sitting forlorn. The middle screen showed Daniel Huxley sitting forlorn. On a bed. In his own cell. On the bed in his cell. On the... The middle screen on the desk showed Daniel Huxley sitting forlorn on the bed in his cell. There was a small goods lift at the end of the corridor next to a flight of concrete steps that curled around the shaft. Sayers called the lift and pushed Mackenzie into it once the doors opened. It took them up one level, coming out close to the canvas corridor that led to the Arboretum. Sayers pushed the chair down the corridor and into the Arboretum itself, positioning it next to his computer screens. He looked thoughtfully at the imprisoned tree. Sayers attached the cables to the headpiece and activated the signal that told Simon that he wished to communicate. It took a few seconds, but he could see the familiar changes to the waveforms on the screen. A few moments later, he heard the sugar pumps activate behind him. Mackenzie's eyes popped open. They were bloodshot, and he looked around him as though he was struggling to focus. Eventually, he saw Sayers. "This body is dying," he rasped. Sayers nodded. "I know. We are preparing another." "Good." The being that was inhabiting Mackenzie closed his eyes. "I will not risk using this vessel again. If it were to die whilst I was inhabiting it, I would also die." "I understand," said Sayers. "Shall I disconnect you?" "Not yet," said Mackenzie. "He is in no danger for a few more hours. I wish to absorb all the Project Yankee material that is in his mind." "You can see that?" Mackenzie smiled. "Yes." A look of concern crossed Sayers' face. "It was nothing to do with me, I assure you. You are a terrible liar, Mr. Sayers. I see that you are hoping to double-cross us. You are hoping to find a sugar production process that created a byproduct that killed the mycelia we used to communicate." Lysine was creating a more potent fuel for me. Look of concern across Sayers' eyes. "It's nothing to do with me, I assure you. You are a terrible liar, Mr. Sayers. I see that you are hoping to double-cross us. You were hoping to find a sugar solution sugar production process that creates a byproduct that killed my series to communicate, but you failed. All you succeeded in doing was creating more potent fuel for us. For us. Sayers' logic was suddenly nervous. Mackenzie had seen what he believed was Sayers' corpse, a ruse to try and reassure him that the information he had been given was genuine. If the being in the tree realised that he was the same person that Mackenzie had seen with apparently fatal gunshot wounds, then surely it would question the veracity of the chemical process they were encouraging it to try. They were hoping it would try. "I shall attempt to manufacture your new sugar here," stated Mackenzie. "Since I'm not connected to the others, if it is some kind of trick, they will not be infected with it. But remember this, human. If I am killed as a result..." "of your Simplicity. Ragnarok will be an inevitable consequence. Are you sure you want me to continue? Do you have anything you wish to tell me? No, said Sayers, his voice steady. There was a pause. I think we're done. I shall disconnect you. We are done when I say that we are, stated Mackenzie. At the moment, I'm absorbing all of the technical information from your project. I will let you know when I'm finished. Okay? One more thing. When I allow us to disconnect, terminate Mackenzie. He's in terrible pain, both physically and emotionally. It is quite unpleasant and distracting. It feels cruel to even make him wait to complete this information extraction, but that cannot be helped. I will consider it. You must do it if you wish to consider you anything more than savages without the capacity for empathy. The eradication of such a species would seem like much less. Much less of a misdeed. Hey Siri, synonyms for misdeed.
Synonyms for misdeed include wrongdoing, wrong, and error.
Of wrongdoing. If you have an ounce of pity within you, kill him. Even if his body were to recover now, his mind is broken. He longs for death. Sayers looked at Mackenzie for a brief moment, felt a pang of regret. He was about to put Claire through the same ordeal, and that was after the ordeal that Clayton was almost... He was about to put Claire through the same ordeal after the horrors. That Clayton was almost certainly subjecting... That's a better way of putting that. Sayers looked at Mackenzie for a brief moment and felt a pang of regret. He was about to put her... He was about to clear the same ordeal after the horrors of Clayton. As they spoke. He was about to put Claire through the same ordeal after the horrors... I need to repeat the word ordeal. I think that works better by doing that. Sayers looked at Mackenzie and for a brief moment felt a pang of regret. He was about to put Claire through the same ordeal after the ordeal that Claire was almost subjected to as they spoke. It is beyond my control, he eventually replied. Then ensure you can communicate my concerns to your ruler. Remind him that kindness is a behaviour shown by a superior race, one that might deserve to survive. Sayers shook his head. You mean like the kindness you are showing by threatening to wipe us out? It has come to a choice of our survival or yours. If the environment of this world reaches a critical point, nothing will live. Not you, not us. Is it unkind to choose the survival of something over nothing? Billions will die, scared. That is how Mackenzie is dying as we speak. What is left of his mind fears for his life and that of his friends. He is particularly dismayed that he will not see a specific friend of his again. You should help him to die. Do not speak to me of kindness when you can't show it to this one. When you can't even show it to this one creature. It's not my call, replied Sayers. I do not wish to speak to you any more, said Mackenzie. I will indicate when I'm ready to disconnect. In the meantime, leave me alone. Sayers was about to open his mouth. Mackenzie glared at him through bloodshot eyes. I'm going to lose the his. And shook his head. Sayers went and sat down at his console. We've arrived. Oakley stood at the front of the coach. They were in a car park inside the Cairngorms National Park, surrounded by a low wooden fence with a gate that led into the trees. Ronnie stood up, gesturing for Vickers to get out of her way. What's the plan now? She asked. The leader of the Arbor troops looked up. Sergeant Jason Fraser. He was Australian. We don't know how many people they have here. It's not that large a complex, but the three main buildings are spread around on the recce. We asked the guys at Alpha Site to discreetly conduct, suggest they may be linked underground. How many people do they have? Asked Brewer. Unknown, replied Fraser. We identified at least 15 individuals, over half of which were armed security personnel. The size of what is beneath our feet is anybody's guess. The land registry was unable to provide us with plans, but we are guessing there could be anything from 30 to 100 people based here. Certainly a food delivery vehicle that arrived whilst they were watching suggested a larger quantity. Barrera shook his head. So you have no idea what you are up against. Ronnie looked across at him. We, surely. It will take a frontal assault to secure this facility, Barrera said angrily, with an unknown number of enemy combatants. From what I can see, we don't have enough manpower. My unit will not be getting directly involved. Ronnie started to walk to the front of the coach. Well, I am going with them. Yeah, I've got a contraction in there. I think it would be better without it. Well, I am going with them. I think that. Well, I am going with them. She motioned to the other troops who were all starting to stand up and leave the coach via the front door. Bro looked angry. You know that I can't guarantee your safety, Madam Ambassador. For the first time that Ronnie had noticed, the word sounded sarcastic coming from his mouth. You could get yourself and all of us killed. Do you want that? Do you want Private Vickers to die pointlessly? Vickers looked to the floor, but Ronnie stood firm. I don't want anyone to die at all, Lance Corporal. I'm going to lose the even you. That's unnecessarily confrontational. But you know the stakes. You know that if we cannot free the entity that is trapped inside this complex, the Ragnarok faction will be victorious and everyone, literally everyone, will die. No designated survivors. The Yakunda and the Opus will suffocate like every other human being on planet Earth. The Arbor troops had finished leaving the coach, leaving the 6 army soldiers at the back with Ronnie. Marion and Oakley were moving to the front with Ursula. Ronnie followed and stepped down beside them. Brera, Vickers, Mills, Matthews, Baines and O'Neill were immediately behind her. Outside, the underbelly of the coach had been opened. The Arbor troops were Hey Siri, synonyms for opening.
Synonyms for opening include hole, gap, and gash.
I'm going to say unsealing. The Arbor troops were unsealing case of equipment and taking out rifles and ammunition. They were all wearing black helmets with radios built into them, which they were checking. Sergeant Fraser was designated Alpha, and all of the others were checking their comms by giving their designations, which went all the way down to X-Ray. He was a short Indian man with an infectious smile and his long hair tied into a bun. Brera watched with concern. He walked over to Oakley, who was deep in conversation with Marianne, and tapped him on the shoulder. OK, I admit it, they don't seem as unprofessional as I worried they might be. Fraser walked past him at that moment, the green of his helmet marking him out as the leader. That is because we are professional, Lance Corporal, he said, stressing the rank. Brera shook his head and was about to say something sarcastic, but thought better of it. Fraser addressed Oakley. We're going to have a quiet look around. Given how important the objective is, we may have to attack. I'll make that call later. How are you going to release the entity? Asked Oakley. We don't know that yet, replied Fraser. It is almost certainly in that dome, which we now know is made from canvas. Hopefully, once we've secured the place, we can tear down the canvas and reconnect the tree. Ronnie had been listening, and she approached Fraser and Oakley. It should be as simple as running some soil from the outside to the foot of the tree. I don't know how long it will take the fungal strands to properly reconnect, though. The Indian soldier, designated X-Ray, was heaving a large box out of the coach. He looked across to Fraser, who nodded. X-Ray opened the box, which was lined with material to keep the contents cool. Inside was a reel of what looked like plastic tubing. This is the fungal equivalent of a fibre optic cable, he said. In theory, we have to drive one end into the soil outside and the other end into the soil near the trapped tree. He smiled broadly. Should speed things up considerably. Ronnie nodded. Put the outside end in a root system. Put each end in a root system. The mycelium will be more concentrated there. Should help to. Help to speed things up. That's our hope, miss, said X-Ray with a grin. We have 3 in this box. One of them should work. Ronnie turned to Barrera. I have to go with them, she pleaded. Barrera shook his head. Once the compound is secure, we can join them. You are not getting involved in a firefight. And if I go anyway? Barrera shook his head. Not happening. I have to keep you safe, even if that means protecting you from yourself. Just one question, interrupted Marianne. What if there are 100 people there? There are only about 30 of us. What will we do with them all? Hold them prisoner? Won't that be difficult? Fraser shook his head. We won't be taking prisoners. You're going to kill them? Marianne looked. I'm going to say they look angry, not shocked. Fraser nodded. We don't have a choice. Wow. Marianne took a step back and closed her eyes. Ronald looked over and took the hand. We really don't have a choice, Marianne. It's awful, but the future of everything is riding on this. You agree with them? I might italicise the agree. You agree with them? Not exactly, but I do understand that it's necessary. Marianne snatched the hand away. That's appalling. Yes, stated Ronnie. Yes, it is. She looked across to Sergeant Fraser, who was deep in conversation with the subordinate. Sergeant, you know what Mackenzie looks like, don't you? He's not going to get hurt. Fraser turned and faced her. He's our secondary objective. What if he's already hurt us, Marianne? Are there proper medical facilities nearby? We don't need them, said Ursula. We just need to get him to a large enough tree. The Arbor troops were all kitted up now, wearing Kevlar jackets and armed with guns. The boxes that contained all their gear had been tied back into the coach. Oakley had been given an earpiece that he could hear what the Arbor troops were saying to each other. Fraser spoke into his microphone, and Oakley gave him a thumbs up. Fraser ran to the front of the group. Ronnie noticed there was an A on the back of his helmet. X-Ray, the young Indian soldier, had an X on the back of his, and each trooper had an identifying letter. Time to move out, shouted Fraser from the front. With that, he started walking at a fast pace into the forest in the direction of the Arboretum. The others followed him out, X-Ray bringing up the rear. Barrera nodded to Vickers, who was pulling some canvas seats from the stowage beneath the coach. Is that it? Snapped Ronnie angrily. Do we just wait now? Barrera nodded, then pointed to the supplies box that Matthews had just unloaded. Well, he said with a sly grin, you could always make us tea. Make us a tea. Darling, Carl Tucker was standing under the hot water of a shower in his hotel in Perthshire. There were no opinion polls to give him an idea how his campaign was performing, but he instinctively felt that it was going well. His doorstep visits were met with enthusiasm, and he talked frequently on the phone to canvassers up and down the country who were telling him the same. People liked his message. He came out of his reverie when he heard the voice of his girlfriend again. Carl, there's a phone call for you. He says it's urgent. Carl thought to himself. Are the girls in the room? Yes. He stepped out of the shower and dried himself quickly before walking into the bedroom, the towel barely covering his modesty. Sarah handed him his mobile phone. He glanced at the screen. The number was not one of his contacts. Who the fuck is this? He snapped down the phone. It is Lord Farnborough. Sorry, I'm not on my usual number, old chap. Things are rather complicated at the moment. I'm sure they are. Tucker shook his head. How can I help you? Once again, I rather think that I'm the one that can help you. I'm sorry for the short notice. I don't have all that many contacts at Arbor anymore, but one of the ones that I do have has just given me some disturbing information. It appears that they've sent an armed force up to the Arboretum intending to free the Dryad trapped within it. Shit. Do you know when? They are probably up there already, replied Farnborough. Bollocks, Tucker swore. Numbers? 24. All former professional soldiers. Anyone we can rely on? No, the vetting process was very strict. Anyone linked to me was excluded from the team. Better let them know. Thanks for telling me. You're welcome. And get Huxley out of there immediately. I will. Tucker ended the call and immediately started another. Clayton, it's Tucker. You've got a big problem heading your way right now. And this is the plan, is it? Asked Ronnie despondently. We just stand by the bus waiting for something to happen. Marianne nodded, then glanced back at the open passenger door. We could always sit inside. Barrera was pacing uneasily. I'm sure we'll re-establish comms with the Arbor troops soon. I'm just going to say, I don't think he'd say that. I'm just going to say with them soon. Ursula was looking worried. Do you think they're okay? Oakley looked grim. I wouldn't like to speculate, he said eventually. Vic was standing next to Ronnie, his hand never straying far from his rifle. He was listening intently. He called over to Barrera. Sir, I think I can hear... No, we'll lose that, I think, I'm going to say. So I can... Sir, I can hear a vehicle approaching on the road. The area they were in was characterised by dense woodland, and there were no trees between the car park, there were no trees between the car park and the road. Nothing had driven past in the 40 minutes they'd been waiting. Barrera stopped pacing and looked directly at him. From which direction? Vickers pointed. North, sir. Barrera nodded. Everyone back on the bus. He glanced at the driver, just rolled a cigarette and was about to light it. Quickly, we need to get out of sight. Is that the direction of the compound? Asked Ursula as Oakley buttered up the stairs. Yes, snapped Oakley. He glanced behind him to see that Ronnie was being dragged up the steps by Vickers, with Barrera close behind. Quickly, the soldier yelled. Everyone on board, then down and out of sight. Matthews was the last soldier on board. The driver puffed up the steps behind him. Everyone had dropped to the floor in the rows of seats. Ronnie had crawled between two of the rows. Everyone had dropped to the floor in between the rows of seats. Ronnie had crawled between two of them. The driver puffed up the steps behind him. Everyone had dropped to the floor in between the rows of seats. Ronnie had crawled between two of the rows on the side of the bus adjacent to the road. She peered up so that she could see outside. In the distance, a blue van was hurtling towards them at terrific speed. Luckily, there was a waist-high wooden fence made from thick posts between the car park and the road, otherwise she may have feared that the vehicle was about to try to ram them. "Get your bloody head down," hissed Barrera from 2 rows away. "We can't afford to let them see us." Ronnie glared briefly back at him before returning her eyes to the road. "The speed they're going, they're trying to get away from something. They're not interested in us." "You don't know that," said Barrera urgently. "Just get your head down." When she still failed to obey, Barrera looked at Vickers, who was next to her. "Vickers!" Vickers leaned forward to pull away from the window. Ronnie kicked backwards and caught his shoulder. He grunted and fell. Ronnie looked at the van as it drove past. There were 3 people in the front seats. 3 people in the front seats, and none of them were looking in her direction. The person in the passenger seat was a bald, thuggish individual who appeared to be screaming at the man in the middle, whose arms were behind him. Ronnie noticed that he was glowing slightly. She looked up at the face as the van shot past without making any sign that it noticed that they were there. Barrera stood up and strode over to Ronnie, a furious look on his face. "You were very lucky there. When I give you an order, it's not for the sake of it." Ronnie turned and sank onto the floor between the rows of seats. The blood had drained from her face. Vickers approached her warily. "Is everything all right?" he asked. Ronnie shook her head and raised her hands to cover her face. She tried to stifle a sob. Vickers reached out to take her hand, then stopped when he realised that Barrera was looking at him. "No, everything is not all right." Ronnie snapped. I'm going to just change that and add a paragraph in. She dropped her hands, revealing wet eyes. Where am I? Marianne was approaching her. "Come over here and sit down," they said gently. Ronnie looked up at them, stood, and sat down on one of the aisle seats. "What's wrong?" asked Ursula, gently joining them. "It was Danny," said Ronnie miserably. "Danny was in that van." "That's all very well and good," said Barrera directly. "But if you saw them, they may have seen you. They could be reporting back to their HQ right at this moment. We can't stay here." "They didn't see me," said Ronnie sulkily. "They didn't have to. All they had to see was the coach, and I doubt they were so blunt they failed to notice it. We need to move." The driver turned and hurried to his seat. "Anyone in particular?" he asked. Barrera shook his head. "Not in this thing. Too slow, too conspicuous. We'll have to take cover in the forest." The bus driver shook his head. "I've been told to stay with the bus." "Whatever," said Barrera, as he dragged Ronnie up to her feet. "Don't watch which way we go. That way you can't answer when they ask you." "Then you need to hide." "When who asked?" called the bus driver, as Barrera pulled Ronnie down the stairs. Ursula was the last person to ascend. Barrera looked at the group: 6 soldiers, a teenage girl, and a non-binary computer specialist, a man in his 50s, an old lady pushing 90. This was going to be slow, he thought to himself. Why do you think they were getting Danny away in such a hurry? Ronnie was walking at a medium pace next to Barrera. Vickers and Milnes were up ahead, whilst Matthews and O'Neill were behind them. Baines was with Ursula, frustration etched across his face, brought on by her lack of speed. "They must know that Sergeant Fraser and his unit are in the air," said Barrera. "We haven't heard anything to suggest military engagement. Until Fraser talks to us, we have no idea what is happening." "Could they set a trap? One says something that none of Fraser or his men had time to let off a shot. That's very unlikely." "Are we heading anywhere in particular?" asked Oakley. Vickers turned around and made a motion to Barrera. "Get under cover," said Barrera urgently. "Someone's coming." Oakley and Marianne dragged Ursula quickly into the cover of the trees, and Barrera did the same with Ronnie. A few moments later, a short figure in combat fatigues staggered into the clearing. Vickers had pointed a gun at him and ordered him to stand still. The figure raised his hands. From what Barrera could see, he was not armed. The man was sweating profusely, and his eyes were red. The more Barrera looked, he could see that most of the man's. Exposed skin was blistered. In a moment, he recognised him. It was a soldier from Fraser's unit. Motioning to the others to stay back, Barrera ran forward to join Vickers. The Arbor soldier was in very poor shape. As well as having burn marks on his skin, there was a large patch of blood at the front of his fatigues. It was not dry either, Barrera noted. It was wet from where the blood was still seeping. "What happened, soldier?" Barrera asked. "They used some kind of gas," said the man. His voice was raspy, and it was clear that it was painful for him to speak. "They got all of us. Some they took away. The others they killed." "I heard no gunfire," stated Barrera. "They used knives," said the soldier with a cough. Barrera noticed that there was blood on his lips. "They took some of us away and stabbed the rest to death." He fell to his knees. "They left me for dead." Barrera looked at the man. They did a pretty good job, he thought to himself. He was not going to last very long. "Matthews," he called. The doctor stepped from the undergrowth and ran forward. The soldier fell to his knees. The Arbor trooper fell to his knees, his breath rasping and uncomfortable. Matthews leaned down and looked at him, just as he toppled to the ground. Seeing the blood come from his stomach, Matthews loosened his clothing. He took a look at the wound in the man's side and the burning on his skin, then looked up at Brewer, shaking his head. "There's nothing I can do," he said quietly. Brewer looked down uncomfortably at the dying man. "How many of them were there?" The soldier shook his head, shivering. "Too many," he said between gasps of air. Those were to be his final words. As they watched, his breathing slowed, then seemed to stop. There was a period of calm, then the figure gave one last tortured breath. Matthews reached down and felt for pulse, finding nothing. He straightened up. "He's gone." Oakley had followed Matthews up to the clearing now containing the soldier's body. He looked across at Brewer. "Are they all dead?" Brewer nodded. "Dead or captured, yes. What do we do now?" "I think we ought to head back to the bus. Get the hell out of here." Oakley nodded. "This is looking like it's got fuck up written all over it." Brewer shook his head. "And that's why you don't pay men to do the job of a professional." He dashed across the clearing to where Ronnie and Ursula were hiding. "We need to get back to the bus now." "What's happened?" asked Ronnie. "I'll explain on the way," said Brewer quickly. "Ursula, we need to hurry. If you can't keep up, we may have to leave you." "Over my dead body," declared Ronnie angrily. She was about to argue further when they all heard some shouts in the distance, followed by a round of rapid gunfire. Brewer rounded on her. "And that's why you'll do as you're told," he said, looking around behind him. "Vickers, Mills, as before, in front." Matthews walked away from the body. That sounded like it came from the way we're going, he said. Barrera nodded. "Yes, the driver's probably dead. If we're really lucky, the coach will still be in one piece." Oakley pulled the gun from his pocket to be greeted by a snort of derision from Matthews. "Are you trained to use that?" asked Barrera in disgust. Oakley nodded. "Of course I am." Barrera shook his head. "Self-defence is very different from offence." He said. "I know," said Oakley through gritted teeth. Barrera raised his voice slightly so that everyone could hear. "Listen up. Vickers and Mills will lead the way. Me and O'Neill with the civvies in the middle." Thought so. "Me and O'Neill with the civvies in the middle. Matthews and Baines at the rear. From this point, shoot to kill. The people at the Arboretum have much heavier military presence than we imagined. Access to illegal weapons too, such as the gas that killed the toy soldiers. I'm going to call in for support. It will take a long time for them to arrive, though, probably too long, if they're willing to send anyone at all." "Sir!" Vickers called out in panic from the front. Almost immediately there was a burst of gunfire. Mills and Vickers fell to the ground. Ronnie shrieked as a group of 10 men in balaclavas appeared from behind the trees close to where the man had fallen. "You are surrounded," came a voice over a loud hailer. "Drop your weapons or the rest of you will be..." It says shot, I'm going to say killed. Brewer's mouth twitched slightly, but he lowered his rifle, gesturing for the others to do the same. Marianne, meanwhile, was trying to prevent Ronnie from rushing over to the fallen soldiers. More armed men stepped out from behind them. The first group moved over to Vickers and Mills, kicking the bodies. Vickers grunted in pain. "Let go of your gun and stand up," he was ordered. Vickers rose to his feet. "Are you okay?" Ronnie called out to him. "I'm fine, miss," he replied. He turned to face Brewer. "Mills is dead, sir." One of the new arrivals walked across and carefully picked up the fallen weapons. Brewer's eyes met Oakley's when he realised that Oakley's revolver was not amongst the firearms that had been retrieved. "I wish to speak to whoever is in charge," said Brewer angrily. He walked towards the first man who had spoken, brushing past Oakley on the way. Oakley kept his face neutral, but the gun was no longer in his jacket pocket. He had not seen or felt Brewer acquire it. Several guns were pointed at Brewer, who raised his hands above his head in submission. "That's up to the boss," said the man in charge. "You will come with us. Anyone who does anything unexpected again..." And with this, he fixed a look at Brewer. "Anyone does anything unexpected again will be killed immediately. Is that understood?" There were general murmurs of assent. "Follow me." They were surrounded by more men with balaclavas and guns. There were at least 20 by now, and guided through the forest towards the Arboretum. Inside the dome, Mackenzie's eyes snapped open. Sez had been idly playing Tetris on his computer screen, but the moment that Mackenzie's dormant frame became animated, the rhythmic slow beat of the heart rate monitor changed. It was enough to catch Sez's attention, and he stood up. Have you completed taking the information? He asked as he stepped towards the body strapped to the chair. The process is complete, replied Mackenzie. It is fascinating. I'm already trying to synthesise the new sugar. Mackenzie's eyes closed for a moment. Can you increase the light in here by approximately 100%? I can, said Sez with a smile, walking over to the console. He opened a dormant window on the screen and adjusted the lighting. It gradually increased so that it was twice as bright as it had been before. Mackenzie nodded. Thank you, he said quietly. I'm attempting to create the new substance now. In just a very small portion of my form. Mackenzie closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them. Yes, he said. It is working. Can you feel the difference? Asked Sez with genuine curiosity. I can, confirmed Mackenzie. There was another pause. I have stopped now. Reverted to the old process. Okay, I'm just going to alter that slightly because that doesn't really make sense. I can, confirmed Mackenzie. Let's lose the pause. Shall I dim the lights? It was uncomfortably bright, and Sez wished he had some sunglasses with him. He placed his hand above his eyes, shielding them from the worst of it. Not quite yet, said Mackenzie slowly. I wish to try one more thing. He closed his eyes, and for a few seconds nothing happened. Then out of the blue, the sounds coming from the sugar pumps stopped as they shut down. Sez ran for the screen and opened a diagnostic window. Is everything all right? He asked Mackenzie when he saw no indication of a system failure on the computer. Perfectly, said Mackenzie with a smile. I'm now able to converse with you without needing the extra nutrients that your machine forces into me. Your new sugar is indeed what you promised. He paused. You must now reconnect me with the collective. I must share this. Sez shook his head. Not without permission from Mr. Tucker, sorry. I have time, Mackenzie conceded. A look of pain crossed his face, which the entity within quickly suppressed. Unlike this human. I will now return to my form, he said as he looked across the tree. I will not risk returning to this one. It is in the final stages of life. I have another ready, stated Sayers. Mackenzie seemed to think. I will signal through your computer when I will signal. I will send a signal through your computer when I next wish to communicate, Sayers nodded. As for Mackenzie, he is in a lot of pain. Please end his suffering now. It's not up to me, but he is one of your ambassadors. He is one of your ambassadors. You could absorb him into you, perhaps even heal him. Wouldn't that be the kind thing to do? Mackenzie shook his head. He is not my ambassador. Ragnarok does not have an ambassador, only a Drizzle. It is your problem to resolve, but the way you choose to resolve it may form part of how we judge you. He closed his eyes. I remind you that compassion is the trait of a superior species. He opened his eyes again. My opinion may help shape the eventual outcome. My opinion. Be kind, Mr. Sayers, for your own sake. Yeah, I'll pass that on, replied Sayers with a smirk. Mackenzie nodded, then the life seemed to drain out of him, his eyes closed and his breathing slowed to almost nothing. Sayers walked over to the console and with relief dimmed the lights. There was a sombre silence as the group were marched through the forest by the Arboretum guards. The weather had taken a turn for the worse. The bright white clouds had become grey and heavy, and Ronnie thought she could hear the occasional sound of raindrops falling, although the canopy of the forest prevented them from getting wet. Two of the captors were at the head of the procession. Next came 5 soldiers, surrounded by many of them balaclava-wearing men. Oakley and Marianne were marching side by side behind them, and Ronnie and Ursula at the back, with Ronnie and Ursula at the back of the group of prisoners. More of their captors brought up the rear. Oakley kept glancing at Barrera, wondering when he was going to make his move. He didn't want to stare at the soldier because he did not wish to give their captors the impression he was expecting something to happen. He also kept glancing behind him. Their pace was currently being set by the walking speed that Ursula was capable of. He could see that her face was flushed and her breathing heavy. Marianne was at her side, supporting her where they could, but it was evident that the rapidity of their march was starting to become a problem. It's a better way of saying that. starting to become a problem. Ursula's foot caught on a protruding root as they marched past a larger tree. She gave a little shriek, and Ronnie grabbed her arm to prevent her from falling over. Ursula stopped for a second to regain her balance. Ronnie stopped to support her and was shouted at by one of the men in balaclavas. "Keep moving!" he yelled at them, prodding them in the back with his rifle. Although it did not hurt all that much, it made Ronnie extremely angry. She grabbed Ursula by the hand and supported her, preventing her from falling over. Oakley thought Brera might use this moment to try and do something. "Do we have much farther to go?" Brera suddenly asked. "Shut the fuck up," was the terse response. "I'm concerned for Ursula. We need to slow the pace, otherwise she's going to hurt herself." He stopped walking and was brutally hit in the back by the butt of a rifle of the man immediately behind him. Brera did not wince. He continued walking without missing a beat. "I will be okay, dear," huffed Ursula, although her tone suggested that she would not be. Ronnie squeezed her hand gently and smiled at her. At that moment, Ursula tripped and fell heavily, dragging Ronnie down with her. Their confused captors not sure if this was a distraction or an escape attempt. That's badly worded. Who are not sure if this was a distraction or an escape attempt. Marianne ran across to Ronnie and Ursula as two fired their guns. Marianne screamed and rolled into a fetal ball. Ursula fell over onto her face and did not move. "Ursula!" yelled Marianne. The men who had fired pointed their guns at them. "Ursula!" yelled Marianne. The men who had fired their guns pointed their guns at them. "Don't move," one of them screamed. "I just want to see if they're hurt." "Ursula!" yelled Marianne. The men who had fired pointed their guns at them. "Don't move," one of them screamed. "I just want to see if they're hurt," cried Marianne desperately. Oakley called over to her. "Come back here, Marianne." Ronnie opened her eyes. "Can I stand up?" she asked. Slowly and carefully was the response. Ronnie moved. Hey Siri, synonyms for careful.
Synonyms for careful include cautious, heedful, and circumspect.
Ronnie moved cautiously onto her knees, her hands above her head. "I'm okay," but they shot Ursula. There was an expanding crimson stain on Ursula's shoulder. She was lying on her back, her breathing was rapid and her face was pale. Oakley wanted to take a step forward, but was uncomfortably aware of a weapon that was being pointed right. Of a gun was being held. Oakley wanted to take a step forward, but was uncomfortably aware of a gun that was being held to his temple. He noticed with grim satisfaction the bear had slunk away into the forest when everyone had turned to see what was going on. Ron looked angrily up at the man who was pointing a gun directly at them. "Can I see if she's all right?" they demanded. The man nodded. Ronnie bent down to the old lady. "Ursula." "Still here, dear," Ursula said, her voice thick with pain. "Just the soldier, I think. I've never been shot before. It isn't very nice." Ursula dropped her knees beside Ursula and moved into a seated position, her back resting against the trunk of a tree. Of a tree, let's just say. Not mention the type of tree, let's just say. She pulled the cardigan from under the buttons at the top of her blouse. The wound was small and deep, and bright red blood was weeping from it. Ronnie put their hand around the back of Ursula's shoulder. There was no exit wound. It's not terrible, but she's going to need medical attention, declared Ronnie. She'll struggle to walk. She needs to be carried. The lead captor walked across to them. We don't have the kind of medical facility she needs. The wound will get infected and she'll die. Ronnie raised her hand. If she's going to die, do the humane thing. Ronnie, snapped Marion in disgust. If there are no medical facilities, we're ready to shoot her. Do you want her to suffer? Shoot her now. Do you want her to suffer? She's right, coughed Ursula through tears of pain. No! Shouted Marianne desperately. The captor seemed to consider her words. Fair enough, he said after a moment, and without warning aimed the gun at Ursula's stomach and pulled the trigger twice. A terrible look of surprise crossed Ursula's face, then her eyes closed. Her breathing, which had started to slow, became rapid again. We need to move out, said the lead captor with an unpleasant sneer. Marianne grabbed Ursula's hand and leaned down and kissed her cheek before one of the men dragged them up by the arm, forcing them away. One of the soldiers is gone, someone suddenly declared. Which way? Yelled the leader. There was silence. Well, we didn't see, said one of the captors. We were distracted. Let's lose that. Then we need to be extra careful, their leader stated. We're almost back at base. Let's get this lot there. Tears were streaming down Marianne's face. We can't just leave her here. A rifle drove to the ribs ended the rebellion, and the group moved further into the forest. Marianne shot Ronnie a furious look as a shaken Oakley scanned the woods around him for signs of Barrera. Behind them, Ursula coughed painfully. As soon as the group were far enough away they could not see her, she shut her eyes. Slowly her body started to be absorbed into the tree she was lying against. As soon as she felt it happening, a relieved expression crossed her face. Her breathing slowed, and over the next few seconds she was dragged completely into the trunk. Moments later there was no sign that she'd ever been there. Barrera stepped from behind one of the trees and looked at the patch of ground that the old lady had been sitting on. He walked up to the tree and ran his fingers across the surface where he had seen Ursula disappear. It felt like ordinary bark. He frowned, then looked the way the group had gone. He pulled out the gun he had taken from Oakley and counted the bullets. He had 6, not enough to take them on. At best, he could do a wreck and get some information about what he was up against, as well as attempting to arrange reinforcements. Barrera started moving carefully and silently in the direction that the group had gone. 3 of you in there. At gunpoint, Vickers and Ronnie were forced into one of the cells in the basement. Marianne gave Ronnie a dirty look and hung back, hoping that someone else would go in there with them, but was forced after them with a rush shove to the back. At gunpoint, Vickers and Ronnie were forced into one of the cells in the basement. Marianne gave Ronnie a dirty look and hung back, hoping that someone else would be put in there with them. But was forced after the others. Let's just read that sentence again. At gunpoint, Vickers and Ronnie were forced into one of the cells in the basement. Marianne gave Ronnie a dirty look and hung back, hoping that someone else would put in there with her, but was forced in after. Hang on, let's just read that again. At gunpoint, Vickers and Ronnie were forced into one of the cells in the basement. Marianne gave Ronnie a dirty look and hung back, hoping something would. At gunpoint, Vickers and Ronnie were forced into one of the cells of the basement. Marianne gave Ronnie a dirty look and hung back, hoping that someone else would be put in there with her. In the cell. But was shoved in after. But was shoved in with a rough push to the back. The door was closed behind them. The cell was tiny and bare. Ronnie did not realise it, but just now before Danny had been held here. What she had not expected, though, was there would already be people in the room. There were 3 men from the Arbor team sitting on the bed. All of them had burns to their skin, rather like the soldier encountered before he died, although not as severe. Only one of them opened his eyes. He was a short Asian man with lesions. Although he was not wearing the helmet or any other part of the uniform that had any identifying marks, Ronnie realised that it was X-ray. They got you as well, he said. His voice was strained. Yes, said Ronnie. I don't know how many of us are alive, said X-Ray. I'm hoping we are not all that are left. This is the first of 3 cells, said Vickers. I wasn't conscious when I was put in here, said X-Ray. Ronnie knelt in front of him. What's the last thing you recall? Remember. What's the last thing you remember? Gas, said X-Ray, his eyes misting over. Some of us died. Some were unconscious, but only just like me. Men in battle came in and stabbed some of us to death. He shook his head. They were brutal. Marion, who'd been standing silent by the door, stepped forwards. We encountered one of your men. He survived long enough to try and warn us. They shook their head. It didn't work. What did he look like? Asked X-Ray. Tall, dark hair, early 30s. X-Ray shook his head. That doesn't narrow it down much. Ronnie stood up, walked over to Marion, who stepped out of the way with a look of anger on their face, and banged on the door. Hey, she yelled, we need some first aid in here. Burn gel and some water. Marion shook their head. Now you want to save someone. Ronnie glared at her, then her facial expression softened. I did what I did for a reason. I can't explain, Marianne, because we are being watched. She gestured up to the camera on the ceiling. Ursula is dead, Ronnie. You had her killed. What the hell are you playing at? Ronnie wanted to say more, but instead glanced up at the camera, her eyes filled with moisture. Marianne glared at her. Ronnie turned to Vickers and found that he was staring at her with open hostility in his eyes. She flopped down on the floor and burst into tears. Marianne glared at her, then a thought entered their head. They knelt and whispered into Ronnie's ears quiet as possible. You left an extra tree on purpose. Ronnie looked at them wide-eyed and gave a tiny incline to the head before nodding up at the camera. Understanding washed over Marianne. Their face softened, and they sat next to Ronnie and hugged her. Vickers stood by the sink, noticing the half-full bucket underneath it. The smell coming from it permeated the entire room. He looked down at Ronnie and Marianne and walked over to them, crouching down. I don't understand, he said. And I can't explain, said Ronnie. Her eyes flickered up to the CCTV camera again, and Vickers nodded. Ronnie stood up just as X-Ray let out another groan. She dove to the soldier on the bed and started banging on the door again. Right, so I think that's that chapter signed off. I've just had a text message, so bear with me. Right, let me just... run this through Grammarly. Let me just... let's display that in a way that is useful to you to see. Not that you can see why it isn't at the moment, but very shortly you shall. Oh, I've got 4 people watching me now. Hello. Right. Let's just... so what's the overall score it's giving me before I do anything? 93. Oh, that's terrible. Yeah, that's fair enough. Well, that was easy. What did that change it to? 93. We'll have that. God, that was easy. Right, let's download that file. Open it. Today would be nice. There we go, chapter 33 is signed off. Now, shall I do a bit more now? Or should I do what I originally planned and just do the one chapter now and come back later? I'm really jet lagged, so I woke up at 3 o'clock and now I'm feeling a bit tired, so I have got another 2 chapters that I can sign off today. My instinct is that I'm tired and I should come back later. Also, I haven't had breakfast yet, so maybe I should have some breakfast and come back. Yeah, I think that's what I'm going to do. So thank you to the people that are watching. Not really any interactions on this, but that's cool. Thank you for spending a bit of time with me. I'll be back in a few hours at some point later today. Follow and turn on notifications, then you know when I'm back. And I shall look at signing off chapters 34 and 35. Thank you so much for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.